Hi there, my name is Morphsuit America. I'm going to be talking with a softer sort of voice because everyone's sleeping. I want to get this recording out of the way and I want to upload it as soon as possible. But this video is going to be quite long because it's going to be giving a lot of in-depth situations, talking about various other things that can help you get certain things. Understand that I am an Augment and a Fixer. I am Morphsuit America. I play on the Japanese PSO2 and this video is going to break down these pop items and what you got to consider. Now, there are various reasons to why you would want them. Maybe you want to use them to get Guardian Soul. However, I will point out various other methods to try to do it. Another thing would be you just want to get those pop items because you just want to try to get a cheaper, accessible, easy all-rounder. That is fine. Just note that there are certain factors to consider depending on a lot of things. So, for example, and note that I will say factors a lot, not only in this video, but several other videos and in my streams, because by factors, I refer to points, I refer to facts, I refer to things that you do. For example, with the certain shop that I'm going to show in a bit, they use mission badge currency. Now, if you're new to the game, you would want to try to do these because they are very good, especially if you want to try to get certain augments and affixes. Now, this currency can be found in your mission pass battle pass. I think there's a couple events I could have gave them, but mainly through here. Now I'm playing on the Japanese PSO2, maybe a bit different from the global, but the thing is you get these badges at certain tiers. My question is, are you farming a lot? Are you playing the game actively ever since the release of global PSO2, or at least NA PSO2, especially from the Microsoft stores? Are you getting both the free-to-play ones and the gold rewards as well? Have you spent a couple of these badges? All these will determine certain approaches that you can do. I'm going to stress some of the extremes, but then I'll show you guys how you can dumb down some of the items, especially with some other things that they still need to do on the global PSO2. Granted that it follows that same sort of format, it will give you those same sort of updates. Now, before I go any further, I advise you, if you are new to augmenting or fixing, and if you are a stranger to my video, to watch a lot of the video links in the description, or give the basic playlist of Fixing Augmenting 101 a shot, because that will explain a good portion of what I'm going to bring up in terms of terminology and various methods that you may not be aware of. There will be a couple other videos in the future where I go further into details about it, especially special ability transfer. Hopefully you've been stocking up on him. Note that I dropped a couple indirect direct hints with some of these future things that you can do. And once again, when it comes to augmenting and fixing, it can be scary, but if you know the basics and if you can break it down, you'll be able to understand it and become a master of it. Not only that, the reason why I teach and stress this a lot is so you guys don't need to spend as much. Because when it comes to augmenting or fixing, it's a technical thing you don't want to put a lot of money into. Yes, I spent a good chunk of Meseta on certain moments, but it was because it was in the moment. Big example of me decreasing something over a period of time is Guardian Soul. Now, if you haven't seen those videos, you can watch them. It is up to you. Once again, there is also several other fixing playlists, especially the one where I go into actual nitty-gritty, full-on breakdowns and me actually doing said process. There's a playlist for that. But when it comes to the Guardian Soul one, there are good chunks of videos for it. The first Guardian Soul I made was in the moment. That was day one of its release. Understand, especially in terms of marketing terms and marketing sense and, news and updates and big things that's going to happen. Anything that is new will most likely be expensive. There are certain factors that will kick in various points, but that day one, I made a Guardian Soul for 300 mil. So some other people were able to do the same thing and they sold it. Second unit piece that I made, it was like a couple weeks afterwards. I made another Guardian Soul piece, but I halved it. So instead of spending 300 mil, I cut it down to 150 mil. Third piece I made, and this one was with a returner, I didn't spend as much. It did not exceed past 100 mil. I don't think it even exceed past 50 mil. And I did do this through various streams, and I did use certain events that happen like grind 0 cost, enhancement 0 cost to my advantage to make it as cheap as possible. Not only that, I've been stockpiling on certain items that can help me achieve my goal. So there's a lot of things that will play into how you go about it. But the point is, you want to go for something that's not going to hurt you. And yes, it's around the corner. It is influencing some people in terms of making final decisions. Some people will not want to try to go for the maximum stuff now because of that. All in all, here's the thing. If you're going to do something technical, you want to spend as little on that technical thing. So weapons, units, spend as little resources, spend as little Meseta so it doesn't hurt you and you can focus on other things like fashion that can carry over. This is ultimately up to you on what ability to go for, and this is why I break down all these things and give you guys options. Now, enough of my long spiel on that sort of thing. Let me go further into this point. So, you get your mission badges and then you can use them over here. These are the 3 big ones. They are good, and this is a pop ad support item. Once again, there's a video that stressed on these things and why they're so good. In terms of you getting these things, it will cost 120 badges. You can get as many of these as you want as long as you have said currency. So if I have 240 mission badges, guess what? I can get 2 of these Astral Soul pop items, or if I want to, 1 of these Astral Soul, I think get an ether factor one. Each one of these costs 120. So if I want to get 1 type of each one of these, it's going to be 360 mission badges. Now, why are these 3 good? Because they are mid-game abilities, and if you don't know how to actually make an Astral Soul ether factor mana rev normally, there are old videos that break it down there's old videos that I made that break it down for you. Now, in terms of making a Guardian Soul, you'll hear me use that one a lot because a lot of people are on defense about that. They're like, oh, Guardian Soul is pretty good because it has all these stats, but when we go to NGS, it's going to be downgraded. And, oh, Guardian Soul is like a 10%. I don't know if I want to try to gamble with it. Once again, if you kind of talk to me, consulted with me, and asked for my tips and advice, if you did certain things that I said prior to, it will most likely play a huge influence to the end game for you. And most likely you didn't need to spend as much, and you can also make a profit depending on how much excess materials you have. But anyways, getting back on this, these 3 abilities are needed to make Guardian Soul. The last thing you need is an Absolute Glare, and once again, there are videos explaining on how to get Absolute Glare and how to go about getting a Guardian Soul. I'm gonna have to edit this because we are going into numbers. So this is going to talk about the extreme first. What is the extreme? Let's say you don't have anything at all. You don't have certain weapons that give you an SAF. You don't have any sort of fodder material or pieces that you got from the battlefield, which you can do to make some of these. Let's just say strictly you are trying to use these pop items to go for a Guardian Soul. That is the extreme. And then not only that, right after you make a Guardian Soul, you want to try to go for all-rounders like Guardian Soul with the ether factor, with a mana rev, with mark abilities, returner 5, crack 5, etc, etc. Here's the problem. You're gonna need a lot of badges and you're gonna need to have played from the very beginning. So, once again, these 3 are giant components that you need to make a Guardian Soul. If you haven't farmed or anything, guess what? That is an immediate 360. You will most likely have to try to farm and make an Absolute Glare, so that's going to take some time. But once you get everything, guess what? You can make a Guardian Soul. Now, if I try to make this on my 3 units and 1 weapon, it's going to stack and it's going to be a big number. How big? Well, if one of these unit pieces, for example, just takes up 360 badges, do 360 times 3. It's 1080. Now if I only went with 2 unit pieces, that's going to be 720. But yes, for all 3 of your units, if you want to get those pop items and just try to use them to try to get it for Guardian Soul, 1080 mission badges. Now let's say you also want to do it with a weapon as well. Guess what? You add another 360 to that number, so it's going to be 1440. Now let's say you do make your Guardian Souls on your pieces, 1 weapon, 3 units. Here's the thing. especially if you want to try to make those all-rounders later on and try to slowly upslot it without having to deal with much. You're gonna need to get these two again. Now for the weapon, it's gonna be super tricky. I would say you would want to try to normally work with it, use SAFs to your advantage and stuff, but for this scenario case, let's say you want to use a pop item of an Artifactor Mana Rev. Why not an Astral Soul? Astral Soul cannot be mixed in or cannot be paired with a Guardian Soul. You can only have one Soul type. So you either go for Guardian Soul, Astral Soul. Obviously, you want Guardian Soul. But let's say you need to get these. So do 240 times 4. And why? It's because you would want to pop these on your units and you want to work at a low grade. The moment you try to work with a Guardian Soul at an 8 slot along with several other abilities, it's going to be a headache, which is why I made a video talking about why working with an 8 slot naturally can be a headache. So 240 times 4, most likely you're going to hear some scratching because I am actually doing physical math. It's going to be 960. Add that to the 1440. 2,400 badges. Now, I don't even think Global was able to accumulate that many badges. If you could, then holy shit, alright. But Japan definitely did not have that. So the thing about Global is that they got it ever since the release. PSO2 was released on the Microsoft Store and they already had this function which gives them an edge. Because Japanese PSO2 only got this around the fall and they only have a couple of these mission pass battle passes. Global has several of these. So they are big. And I don't know, once again, if you guys actually have a total of 2,400. But if you use only these pop items alone to do the certain things that you want to do for endgame and just use these to try to make a Guardian Soul, that's pricey as hell. Now, this is where I point out several things that will help you. Once again, it would be good to farm, so you don't need to get all these things. The big reason to why people will get these pop items is after you make Guardian Soul and you go for certain things. If you watch the videos that I have in the description where I personally make my second and third Guardian Soul unit piece, you see me use these pop items in the special ability transfer. It is important to note those videos. There will be a video stressing that out again in the future. But those things can help you get to an 8 slot and then also have all these different all-rounder stuff. Granted that you work with the unit beforehand and you finalize everything before you start using pop items. I physically put Artifactor, Absolute Glare, Returner 5, Crack 5, and a Guardian Soul on this particular piece before I finalized it. The only pop items I placed on this is pretty much the Mana Rev and the Mark Joyo. Now you might be wondering, wait a sec, how do you get Artifactor without using that pop item? Receptors. And you guys just got Receptors over there in the Global PSO2. Now the only downside to those Receptors is that they're not at a high slot number. So if you worked with something that's at a 4 slot and try to push it to a 5 slot, you are one, gambling, but not only that, yeah, that's all you can do to try to increase that chance. And the reason why you want to use the Receptor is so you can start or have that chance to move that factor ability. So here's the thing, if you're not familiar with Receptors, this is a quick breakdown on it. I do have a video talking about it, but for Global, just to understand it, Receptors do not allow, they cannot be stacked. You cannot try to upslot them. They have to be dropped naturally or found naturally. With Global, it is stuck at a 4 slot and it is combined with Ether and, well, excuse me, Factor and a Soul Receptor. Technically over here on the Japanese PSO2, we could try to get these Receptors at certain slot numbers. So if I go over here where I type in these names and I clicked on this, you can see that these things can actually pop up at higher slot numbers. 7 slot it is nothing, but at a 6 slot you can actually get a Soul and Factor Receptor together. There's also a couple at 5 slot and then there's also 4, 3 and etc. Now the other thing is you don't have all the receptor types, because guess what? There's now a Reverie Receptor, and this thing can help you transfer a Mana Reverie not at 100%, but at least with a decent percent, a chance to just move it at 10%. Not only that, this Reverie, for example, also has a soul receptor, which means that now you could try to move something that already has like a Guardian Soul and a Matter Rev and try to combine it together, which means you don't need to try to use those certain badges or this capsule from the mission badge, and you can save those resources. Another thing to point out, and this is whenever Global decides to actually finalize your mission pass battle pass with the actual pop items for these Factor, Ether, Soul, Omega Memoria, Reverie catalysts. There's at least 2 of them in the Japanese mission pass battle pass, and that there's a high chance that that's going to carry over there to Global. So they only give you 2 of them for your mission pass battle pass. But this is something to note, and this can help you try to make said fodder pieces and you to try to make an Ether Factor in Mana Rev, which is why I made a short video also emphasizing on these pop items as well. So that can help you save your medals, so you don't need to spend on these things. You want to use these things when you try to finalize everything. So, with all of that out of the way, let's go back to this math scenario. Let's say you did make a Guardian Soul with all the pieces, with all these other items, and now you want to try to make the end game stuff, end game all-rounder formula. So, guess what? You just need these 2 once again. You would definitely want to try to finalize and make Absolute Glare because there's no pop item for it. They might add it eventually, but that is a gamble. That is up in the air. But you need these 2 for sure if you want to try to combine that with the Guardian Soul. So if you focus on one of your unit pieces, guess what? That's 240 by itself. But let's say if I want to try to work with this on, what is it? On the units alone. So there's 3 unit pieces, 240 times 3, 720. Obviously, I could add 240 if I also put this on the weapon. But now let us talk about weapons. Now, obviously, you can use these pop items as well for weapons, but with weapons, there are SAFs, and I would rather use those, especially instead of getting a Mana Rev or even an Ether Factor. However, Ether Factor is a bit questionable. So, these Union weapons, actually, better yet, instead of showing that through the market, let me actually show it through my storage. Excuse me if you heard my burp. These Union weapons, and you get these from Rainbows, and you can also get a good chunk of them, I think, from Divides. If you get them at an 8 slot or at whatever slot number you're working with, you can have 100% guaranteed of an Astral Soul. You just need to get this to plus 35, and depending on the slot number, you need to get it to that desired slot number. If you can get an 8 slot, that is fine, because that is the maximum slot number. Not only that, guess what? You got profound weapons, or the stuff that drops from Persona. These things can give you an SA of a Reverie catalyst. Now, I already did a video talking and emphasizing a bit further about SAF. Watch that video to understand why you need to finalize it and actually put a catalyst on to the actual weapon. But if you want to try to get Mana Rev, you want to use this to your advantage. Now, for Absolute Glare, you would need to physically make that. And with Ether Factor, there is an SAF for an Ether Factor on weapons, but it is through a 15 star, and I advise you not to actually destroy this certain 15 star. It is called a Fluxio. You get this through Challenge Mile 3. But they have an SAF of an Ether Factor. What you would want to do is most likely try to make that physically as well, so you can do that on your weapons. Shouldn't be as bad compared to a unit. So let's just go back to this scenario, and let's say we decide to just stick with 2 of these and just do it for units, and you decide to try to make it on and make a Guardian Soul physically through the weapons with SAF and the stuff you farm for. So it's like 240 times 3, you are spending at least 720 metal. Now, once again, global kind of has an advantage, but that depends on certain things, like if you've been playing the game from the very beginning. If you have, then you might be in a very, very good position, especially if you did not use a good chunk of your badges. Now, if you decide to join the game Because a few months back, if you decide to join in the beginning of fall or late fall or beginning of winter, then you might not have 720 badges. Or 720 badges. That means you would need to farm or use some alternatives like the things that I brought up with these things. Now, there's also a possibility, now I'm not going to highlight this and stress it out, but there's a chance that you can also get a lot of soul catalysts drop in future seasonal urgent quests. There's a lot of soul catalysts that I have in my storage, and they came from those future seasonal urgent quests. So if I type in catalyst over here in my unit stuff, you can see they're dropping at various slot numbers. I got a lot of 8 slots, and you can see it's a natural soul catalyst. So making an Astral slow shouldn't be as bad on a unit piece. Granted that they give you guys the same sort of loot drop we have over on the Japanese side. So this is things you got to consider. And if you try to do this once again on all 3 of your units, it's gonna eat up a good chunk. Now, let's say you aren't intending, you don't plan to get Guardian Soul. So pretty much you want to stick with these all-rounder stuff. Astral Soul at the Factor Mana Rev. Most likely make an Absolute Glare later with Return 5 and Crack 5. And put some other stuff on it. Or make it even cheaper. Like let's just say Astral Soul at the Factor Mana Rev. Return 5, Crack 5, and that's it. Then pretty much you would need, what is it, 360 times 3. It's 1,080 medals. If you want to do it for all 3 unit pieces, once again, you can also add a bit more math into this or add another 360 if you want to try to put this on your weapon, but there's SAFs and some other alternatives you might want to go for. If you had to go for a Guardian Soul on a weapon, I would say no, and the same can be said with the units. It ultimately falls down on how you personally feel, what you think is convenient, what you think you can work with. You don't need the best stuff to actually play PSO2. You can have mediocre, okay, decent, above average augments and affixes and do well. The big thing about PSO2 is that it kind of emphasizes on a balance of things like skills, builds, augments, abilities, equipment. So you want to find the middle ground for everything for you. And once again, this is your story, this is your gameplay. You want to choose how you want to do it. You will note that I do not stress the need to make a Guardian Soul. I stress if it is cheap and it is easy, you go for it. You want to fix smart, you want to farm smart. So if you have any question, comment, concerns, put it down below. That is pretty much it. I'm gonna hate editing certain parts in, especially the goddamn numbers, and make sure the text is fine. But yeah, do you need to get these pop items? No, you could once again use indirect methods like soul receptors, factor receptors, using pop items, using the stuff that you find off of the field, using I don't know, buying some stuff as well if you want to, if someone can give you a bargain. Just depends. Do you need to get all 3 of these, and do you want to spend that many badges? It falls on what you have. I would say do not do the extreme, because that is eating a lot of badges, like 2,400. Like, do you really have that much? And even then, like, let's say you can personally work with a weapon and try to get the Guardian, so do you really want to try to do all of the unit upgrades and affixing, tampering, and all of that? Like, for 3 unit pieces, do you want to use those pop items and use so many badges just to do that when you can try to farm and use other alternative methods? So that is it. Thank you guys for watching. Question, comment, concerns, put it down below. There will be future videos emphasizing on certain things, different formulas as well. But that is it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.